possible for Black people to accumulate large sums of wealth and power in a way that is not inherently detrimental to our community? And how do we hold space for people who we admire, who are very wealthy and powerful, while still having the courage to call them out when their behavior is problematic? And finally, do the wealthy Black elite resent being held accountable by the Black community at large when we take issues or have objections to what they do? Well, I'm glad you asked, because we're talking about it after the break.
Brokers, welcome to another episode of Brokers, where we talk about the unbelievable ish this country has done to keep us broke. Now here are your hosts, Amber and Erika.
Hello, everyone. I'm Amber.
And I'm Erika.
And today on Brokish, we are having another conversation about accountability and how to hold our Black elites accountable for the choices they make and the spaces they occupy.
Oh, I am going to try to keep my eye rolling to a minimum in this conversation. I had to pull my microphone real close because I want y'all to hear me saying the things I'm going to say.
I was just about to say, before we start this conversation, I want the prayer warriors among us to start interceding for Erika that her eyeballs remain in her sockets through this conversation, because we do not want our good sis to have to file an FMLA claim because of her excessive eye rolling. Well, she can't do that because she don't got no job right now, but
I have two jobs, but thank you very much.
Oh, but anyway, okay. So before Erika loses her eyeballs, how you doing, sis? How you doing?
Amber, I am extraordinarily tired today. I am very out of sorts, but I do want to share something with the brokers. Y'all, over the weekend, I got to go to Bible study that was hosted by my good sis, Amber. Amber came to the people with a word. And even though I don't necessarily know that I agree with her, because again, a lot of y'all, taps mic, ain't gonna see Jesus. I am glad that Amber believes that we serve a big God who is available to all the people. So Amber, I want to say thank you. And I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you for listening to the call and accepting it, because I be sending people to voicemail. So I'm glad you're not that kind of a person.
I appreciate it. I also love how that lady distilled that whole message down to one place where I said we have to hold tension for the fact that God loves all of us. Even people who do things that are terrible. Like, we have to make space for people at the feet of Jesus. And that lady raised her hand, y'all, and she said, but what about fill in the blank?
What about most of y'all?
Because she made it very clear, okay, that her expectation when she walks through the pearly gates is that most of us is not going to be there with her. It's going to be her, Jesus, and a few other 2-3 people, okay?
I would like a VIP experience. I would like exclusivity. I would like to not have to see y'all in the afterlife. Many of y'all I would like to not have to see. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is that Amber, it was put on Amber's heart for her to get the people together in Bible study. And unlike a lot of us, she actually listened to the thing that was put on her heart. She did it. She put out her own money. She brought her family. She brought the people together, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Amber.
Well, thank you. And thank you for coming and supporting. My heart is still full. I still can't really talk about it or I'll start crying, but thank you for being there and for your encouragement. Y'all, Erika said she was going to be my armor bearer, for people who are Baptists. Y'all know what that is. And, when you're doing something and putting yourself out there for people to just be willing to help you, that makes all the difference in the world. So I really do. I appreciate you. I really do. And then we got a double whammy because we got to see each other yesterday too, y'all. We took all of our 227 children And Delina and her family, and Erika and her family, and me and my 700 kids, we went down to Sundance Square in Fort Worth, Texas, to the Jubilee Theater, and we saw Langston Hughes's A Gospel Black Nativity. And I personally haven't felt that kind of, you know, that kind of shanana in my shando since like 90s revival. Like I didn't know how badly I needed to hear that kind of music. I didn't know how badly I needed to see people catching the Holy Ghost in real time. And so, the play was a little wonky, I'm not gonna lie, but the music was everything. And I enjoyed myself. Okay. My baby asked me, she said, Mommy, did you catch the Holy Ghost? I said, yes, Mommy did.
So first of all, Amber is not lying about these children, y'all. We went to the theater and had a whole row to ourselves. Like a literal row was just us and our family. So it was a lot. It was a lot of people there. I think my children also just did not understand, but the music took me back. And yes, I was back in a place, and for the moment it was wonderful. So I appreciated that. And every year as a family, we try to do a Christmas thing. So whether it's a play or it's a musical or a concert, whatever it is. So I'm happy that I checked my box and that I got refilled at the same time. Well, look, I got to check boxes because these kids keep track over here. They be like, Mommy, we haven't done so-and-so yet. Mommy. So, you can imagine my kids be keeping me in line, okay?
Yes. Listen, Erica's kids was spitting game yesterday. They was putting us on the jobs and everything. I love it. So keep your mama in line, girls. Keep your mama in line. Okay.
But talking about keeping people in line, that's what we're here to talk about today. Okay, yes. Amber, we are here to talk about keeping people in line. And y'all, I'm gonna say that this episode is motivated by, is that the right word? Like it is a result of all the shenanigans that go down in the group chat.
We bring in the group chat to Brokish, okay? And this is our group chat. We bring in the group chat to Brokish.
Except the other person in our group chat don't want to show her face. So, name names or keep it on the playground. I'm gonna name names. So she's gonna keep it on the playground, and that's up for her. But I think she kind of gave me. Did she kind of give me the okay to talk about the things that she might have said in the group chat?
She did. Okay.
Well, you're my witness. So
I was a witness.
Okay. But and I can't even, I know how this started. This started because I was saying that, so I took this class about writing op-eds. That's another thing altogether. But one of the things that we have to do is that we have to write an op-ed. And so I've been thinking about, what do I want to write an op-ed about? What do I have to say? What do the people want to hear from me anyway? And so I was thinking about this article that I read recently about Tyler Perry and about how his wealth is not trickling down to the Black community in Atlanta. And then I was also reading this article about Ronald Reagan and trickle-down economics and how it became one of the key reasons that the racial wealth gap has grown and continues to grow. So anyway, those things were like fighting each other in the back of my mind. And I am coming humbly to the group chat, right? Because I am trying to get feedback on these ideas. I'm like, y'all, I'm thinking about this. Does this make sense? Blah, blah, blah. And so in the group chat, it was basically like people throwing daggers at me, right? Like, why you always got something to say about Black people? You don't like nobody. You hate everything. Nobody's good enough for you, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what happened to healthy critique? Like, is that not a thing that we can do as Black people with each other? We can't have no healthy critique. So anyway, that's the background of how we got here today.
It wasn't that dramatic, y'all, but yes, that's how we got here. And I do think we need to have the conversation, because we've seen time and time again when a lot of our faves behave in unproblematic ways and people dare to raise their hand and say, hey, this is a problem. We've seen people get branded as haters online, have to shut their social media down, get doxxed. And so one of the things that we felt like it was important to talk about is how do we create a liberation framework that makes room for accountability, right? Like, how do we root for people, have space to enjoy who they are, the ways that they have made positive contributions, while still being able to say, but in this way right here, friend, you're out of line. And I think that we all need to stop and interrogate how we stand up as people willing to be accountable and to be held accountable, right? Because one of the things that Delina said, I mean, because Erica's the daggers she's talking about was allegedly coming from Delina, but basically all of us, because of, you know, this real messed up society that we live in, capitalism ain't shit, all the things, right? All of us are positioned in ways where there's always somebody under us, right, who can
Sure.
look at what we're doing or the extent to which we are existing entrenched in these frameworks and say, wow, you're problematic, right? And so I do think that's a valid point, but not a point that points away from criticism, but a point that reminds us why everybody's voice needs to be included in the discourse, because where you sit determines what you see. And so we need to be willing to listen to the people who have seats that are different than us because they can see things that we cannot see, right? And so, yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
yeah,
some of this stuff I feel like it should go without saying, but clearly that's not the case. But my position, everybody's position in a capitalist society, yes, is built on a hierarchy. That's what capitalism is a hierarchy. And so of course, there's always going to be somebody, whether it's somebody down the street, somebody around the world, whose station is worse than mine. But
yes.
that doesn't put me on the same footing as Beyonce in terms of the power that I have to move people, to make changes, to like use my power for good or for evil. Like I just, to me that is just not a genuine argument. Like to look at somebody like me and go, well, somebody else is worse off than you, just like you're worse off than Beyonce. Well, that's not the same damn thing.
I know it's not. You're right about that. But this is where I struggle with this. And I feel like I'm sort of taking the position of my children and anybody out here who's parented anyone or, you know, been responsible for somebody. Like, you know how your kids will be walking by something and you'll be like, pick that up. And they'll be like, but I didn't put it right there, right? And they feel like, well, why should I have to pick this up or put this in the trash if I didn't put it there? And that's the struggle I have. Like, we did not break this shit, right? This is not our mess. We didn't create it. And so the place where I have tension about this is putting any burden on any Black person, right? Anybody who lives
Even the
with,
richest among us.
well, here's the thing, because even if you are a wealthy Black elite person, even the wealthiest among us, they are still constrained by this construct we know as race. And I'm not saying that the wealth doesn't cross pollinate to give them privileges. I'm just talking about the general overarching responsibility to fix some shit they didn't break. That's just for me where I hold the tension. Like asking somebody to fix something they didn't break.
But I don't think they want to unbreak it because I
But
think
it
it's good for them.
Well, I yes, I agree with that too. But being invested in the unbreak is not the same as actively participating in the break. And that I get exactly what you're saying. I'm just saying for me, that's where I hold attention because I feel like we have a lot of these conversations about wealthy Black elite people and the power they should be exercising. But at the end of the day, what we all know is that they're all still Black. And it doesn't really matter what they accumulate or what they have. They are still existing in this place as Black people who will never have or experience a seat at the table in the same way as their wealthy elite counterparts who are white. And
So
so I'm
I'm
just saying for me, that's the tension I
yes.
hold, like, you know.
I get the tension. I want to break the tension. But I just I just feel like, and I'm going to ignore like the seat of the table part for right now. Of course, I understand that in this country in particular, Blackness carries a burden. Like everybody knows that, right? You can't be Black without a burden. I get that. But for some of these folks that we're talking about, like the way that their Blackness gets in their way is just in terms of not allowing them to accumulate as much money as they probably want to in the time frame that they want to be able to do that. So like, let's take a real life example. Okay, let's take Mr. Perry, if we can take Mr. Perry. So I'm gonna bring up the article that I was talking about, and we're just gonna read a little bit of it, right? And you know, it is what it is. So Tyler Perry, and this article is talking about like what they're calling this liberal version of trickle down economics. And to me, the liberal version of it is that it's in blackface as opposed to Ronald Reagan, right? That's the liberal version. But the author starts out by talking about Maxine's Baby. Now, have you seen Maxine's Baby on Netflix? I have not.
I
Did you
haven't
watch it?
either. No,
Okay.
I haven't watched it yet.
So I'm gonna be fair. Amber and I haven't seen Maxine's Baby. I know some people watched it and liked it and were moved by it and all of that. But anyway, it's sort of his documentary. And this author doesn't look favorably upon the documentary. The author is making it seem like it's basically an ad for Tyler Perry. So I'm gonna put that to the side. The documentary doesn't mean much to me. The part that's interesting to me is that the author talks about the notion of trickle down economics. And I think most of us know about the notion of trickle down economics from Ronald Reagan. And that was supposed to be the thing that happens, right? So if you make taxes low for companies, what they do is they go out, they create jobs, they create opportunity, and all that goodness trickles down to those of us at the bottom of the economic and social ladders, right? Like we get all that goodness from these companies using these tax breaks and these incentives and doing things that companies do. And then it all flows down. That was the idea. So the thing about the article that I find interesting is because it's sort of comparing Tyler Perry and his version of trickle down economics. And you're like, well, what does Tyler Perry, who is not a politician, what does he have anything to do with trickle down economics? So to start, y'all might have heard that however many years ago when Tyler Perry, in 2015, when Tyler Perry bought an old army base, he bought it for $30 million. And apparently that was a discounted price at the time. So he bought this army base, and he bought the army base with the understanding, the assumption that he would use it to create what we now know as Tyler Perry Studios. I mean, it's a full-on big A compound out there in Atlanta, right? And in one of the poorest areas of Atlanta. And so the article's saying that, hey, we think that the land would have been estimated for about 75 million. So he got this at less than half off. So great deal already. But apparently, according to this article, he was working with the then Atlanta mayor, Kasim Reed, on a couple little enhancements to the deal, right? Some sweet tax breaks. And those tax breaks are that, for example, Tyler Perry Studios, with its estimated worth from Forbes of $280 million, didn't have to pay taxes to the local community from 2015 to 2022, right?
Wow.
I'm going to imagine that that would have been a lot of money from 2015 to 2022, not have to pay taxes, right? On this land that, although he bought it for $30 million, had a higher estimated value. And then, as the author points out, that money is money, just like in many places, that would have gone to the local economy and to local public schools. Now, Tyler Perry, who got his wealth and fame on the backs of Black people, my first question, Amber, is why does Tyler Perry have to enter into this sort of a sweetheart deal and ask for and get tax breaks when he's already getting the property at half off, right? Like, so even if nothing else happened, you're buying this property in a depressed place. Why do you need the tax breaks?
Yeah. So this is sort of where we all kind of diverged in the group chat, because then to me, the question is not why would he get the tax breaks? It's why are they offering them in the first place? right?
That as
Why
well. But
why are they offering them in the first place? And I think that is a more germane question, because I just feel like that's human nature in anybody. If you sweeten the pot, yeah, you're gonna take it. I mean, that's the self-interested instinct in all of us. And so I feel less offended by the person doing exactly what is expected or consistent for them to do than for the people who are allegedly purporting to represent the people to sell them out and put the deal on the table in the first place. Now, I will answer the question you ask just because I do think it's a fair question, even if it's not the primary question. I think he took it because a lot of people in his position like to believe that it's better for them to have it as a Robin Hood or as a good actor than for somebody else to have it. Because I also did some research before we started today. And if you listen to Tyler Perry talk when he does interviews, he regularly talks about the jobs he's created, the ways that he has contributed to the economy and to employing and hiring Black creatives. And so I think if you ask him, what he would say to you is, I took it because I needed to be in a position to do or accomplish a greater good. Now, we all know that that's a real questionable mathematical equation, right? Because even if you're hiring Black creatives, if you're doing it at the expense of education and if you're doing it at the expense of the local neighborhood, and one thing I'll say to you is I'm gonna be open and vulnerable and share something with y'all. I went on a tour of Tyler Perry Studios.
oh gosh.
When I
And
was at a
in the bookstore, she bought a copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad.
oh wow, this she not gonna let me live that down. But I will just say it is very clear that what's happening around that neighborhood is a rapid gentrification, like out of this world. Out of this world. You can tell, the closer you get to the studio, the more pronounced the gentrification is. And so it's very clear that our people are not reaping the benefits. I was at a work event, and so the bus driver was just telling us, just casual conversation, that the price of homes in that area, like it had just gone up so much. And although you could see that it was very much still a Black community, I suspect that a lot of the people who are native to that community are rapidly getting priced out by what's occurring around it. And so those things are happening. But I think if you ask him, he will focus on what he's doing
Trickle
that he
down.
feels like, yes, is offsetting that harm and that type of financial and political violence.
Yes, and that to me is what it is. It's violence. So you say the bigger question is, why is Kasim Reed, the then mayor of Atlanta, offering the tax cuts? Well, that question, of course, I think we all know the answer to, right? The Black Miss Leadership class is like all the other politicians, right? Their role is to try to get all of these people in for investment opportunities. You see that in every city. You see that in the city where you live. I see it in the city where I live. That's what mayors do. They're trying to get people in here under the false pretense of creating a bigger tax base, but it's always based on tax incentives, which I find very interesting, right? So you say you're
Yes.
trying to have people come in here because you want to have a bigger tax base, but all you're doing is offer them tax breaks. But anyway, so I think Kasim Reed was just doing what Black mayors do. Anyway, the part for me that becomes insidious is because Tyler Perry is somebody who says the Black community made me, right? Black women made me. I am Maxine's baby, right? So Tyler Perry says all of these things, but at the end of the day, he's willing to take how many millions of dollars out of the pockets of Black children and Black people in the neighborhood where he says he is going because he's trying to make it better for them, make it make sense. And what will happen is Tyler Perry can do that, and we don't interrogate the fact that he also got some Georgia tax money or some, for having a
A
studio there.
film
There's also
studio.
some,
That's right.
exactly, there's money there as well. He does all of that at the expense of Black people. But then what he will do is when it's Christmas time, Tyler Perry will let everybody know somehow his PR people, how he done paid off people's layaways at Walmart. Now, I don't know about you, Amber, but I would rather my children be able to go to school and have the supplies that they need, as opposed to Tyler Perry going to a few local Walmarts talking about he done paid the layaways off. That is why I think that this is not benign. And to your point, I think that this is financial violence and abuse that is levied against the Black community. And we don't say nothing because he Black too.
But I also think that part of the issue is not just that we don't say something because he's Black, but I think a bigger issue is that we don't have a framework for having these conversations. Because right now, as we're having this conversation, I'm willing to bet all of the gummy bears I have in my pocket that if this were to go viral or if this were to get a lot of traction, it would not be because there were two Black women on the internet interrogating how we hold each other accountable. It would be branded, look at these haters shitting on Tyler Perry, right? Look at these two women sitting up here hating on
Taking
Tyler
the Black
Perry,
man down.
talking about a Black man who does all of these things. And so there is a very real way that we have propagandized people through documentaries like Maxine's Baby to believe that there is something evil and unholy and ungodly about challenging people who do good things, right? Because it's, listen, we ain't up here trying to villainize this man and make it seem like he's a terrible person. Like, empowering Black creatives, that's great. If Tyler
Does
Perry is
he?
your speed, listen, if you listen to the people that work for him, like, if you hear some of those actresses and actors talk about how they never been paid equitably before they did a Tyler Perry production, like how their salaries have been lowball. I'm not about to sit up here and act like this man has never done anything good before in his life. But just because somebody does something good in one place doesn't mean we should not be able to hold space as a community to say, here's a place where you need to do better. And I think one of the reasons why people like Tyler get away with what they get away with is because they're very intentional about cultivating images and cultivating authoritative pictures of themselves that make them beyond reproach, that make it seem like if you are trying to reproach them, that what you're actually doing is hating on them and trying to take them down. And so they are able to largely get away without even having to answer the questions. Even if they offer something back that feels like an explanation or an internal decision-making process for why I felt like what I did over here was for the greater good over here, even if we don't agree with it. But the fact that they're not even willing to answer the questions, and that they themselves often play into this notion that you don't have the right to question me because look at how many kids I Christmas this year, or look at how many times I go into the grocery store and pay for everybody's groceries, or look at how many Black creatives have jobs now that would not have jobs if it wasn't for me. And it's like, well, that is all awesome, but we still have to be accountable to each other.
We do. And one of the questions that I hear a lot is he's an entertainer, essentially, right? And why am I expecting an entertainer to be held to political standards? And here's the difference for me, Amber. When you are engaged in political negotiations, you're making yourself into a politician. When you're engaged in local government to be able to get tax breaks and other incentives for you and your company, that is political activity. So I am going to judge you politically. And so, yeah, based on that, for me, it's not enough that you go and buy turkeys for people at Thanksgiving. Like, it's not. And for him and other people like him, Mother Oprah, I'm talking to you, right? To be able to use Blackness and the Black community to continue to do this, I think it is really dangerous. And for Black people, even in our group chat, to be like, I don't feel comfortable with you calling out a Black man in public like this. Well, I don't know, Mr. Perry. How am I going to call him out, Amber? Should I write him a letter? Like, what? How am I supposed to hold this man accountable that I don't have access to? How am I
Well,
supposed to do it if not publicly?
I think there is something to be said about the point that it is wildly ironic and grossly unfair to make Black people the poster child for the ways that capitalism and nefarious politics are harmful to marginalized communities. Like, I think that's trash. So I think there is something to be said about that. I'm not saying you can't call people out in public, but I do think, again, that we all know what happens when our messages go beyond our community. And then, it's no different than what happened during COVID when Black people were protesting, saying it would be lovely if the police would stop killing us at a rate 3 times greater than our presence in the population. And because we had the audacity to protest and say that, then it became, well, look at Black people driving the COVID surge. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that there's nothing wrong with calling people out, but I do think having mindfulness about how you do it, because you know that there are nefarious actors within white constructs who will gladly grab onto that and deflect and make that the issue when that ain't really the issue at all. It's fruit and not the root.
And I know that people do that and like they take all kind of stuff and use it in other ways. But what I'm saying is, when we're talking in Brokish, we're talking about Black stuff, right? And we're talking to mostly Black people. I am not involving myself in the white people in business. Like I'm not. But it's just interesting to me that everybody is okay and understands when Amazon is trying to find a place for their headquarters and people are protesting and they're like, we don't want it here because we don't want the gentrification. We don't want the inflation. We don't want all the problems that having an Amazon headquarters is going to bring to our community. And people are rightfully protesting that. And then somebody like Tyler Perry would do the same thing. But we don't have any notion of protest. That is Black excellence, right? That is, look at what this man is doing. That is the Black billionaire on display making moves. He's playing chess. And I'm just like, but y'all, how come it's not good if they do it, but it's good if we do it? That's the part that I'm confused by. But again, I'm not in the white people business.
No, I hear you. And I don't think there's any confusion about it. Right is right. The same thing came up with recently Beyonce held a showing of her new movie in Israel. And it was just
look at you bringing up your fave, your problematic fave. I love that, Amber.
Really, sis? Like, really? Like, it was just one thing to exercise your God-given right to remain silent and not speak on political issues. But girl, I know somebody tapped you on the shoulder and was like, just in case you weren't aware, let me make you aware of that. And if didn't nobody tap you on the shoulder, hire me, sis. Okay? And let me help you out. Because somebody should have tapped you on the shoulder. And I do think, yes, we have a way of existing in a dichotomy when it comes to our faiths. But what my question is how do we hold them accountable when so many people amongst us have been propagandized to believe that any form of accountability is akin to a takedown? Like, how do we reshape that narrative within ourselves? Because it can't just be the same people over and over again who are constantly going to be branded haters, who are constantly going to be, told, stop trying to, shit on Black excellence. How do we change that thought process amongst ourselves? Like, so that everybody can hold space and be like, okay, yes, is Diary of a Mad Black Woman funny? Did I enjoy it? Yes. I like when she threw that man in the bathtub and he was gargling them bubbles. I love it. That's like one of my favorite movie scenes ever. But can I also make space for the fact that Tyler Perry inflicts political and financial violence on marginalized communities? Yes, I can. And both of those things can be true at the same time. But how do we start to get other people to see that that's the same thing across the board for a lot of people?
I don't know, and that to me is really the question, because in terms of us supporting Tyler Perry and his art, if you think it's art or not, that's easy to do because we do that with our dollars, right? But when it comes to holding him accountable, we don't have the same tools at our disposal to hold him accountable because he's operating at a higher level politically and in other circles that we don't have access to. So, yes, we can. And even if we say, like, on the one hand, we could withhold our dollars and that's how we hold him accountable. I don't know that the connection is as direct. I don't know how we make a direct connection to accountability. And that to me is why it's so frustrating, because am I a hater? Yes. About a lot of things in life, Amber. And it just is who I am, and that's fine. But in this case, I really don't think I'm being a hater. I really don't like that Black people keep getting shit on by other Black people, and we think it's okay because they Black. I'm not for it anymore.
But you know what? Part of that, though, is I think we have all been to some degree socialized by people who were socialized by people who were socialized that you respect people who have positions of authority, you respect elders. And so I think there is a way that we are very normalized to
Sure.
assuming that a position of power equals an immunity. I mean, because think about it, like I'm sure you remember, like we spent all the 80s and the early 90s being lectured by Bill Cosby about how
Child.
all of our problems would go away in life if we pulled our pants up, if we had some dignity, if fathers returned to the home, if we managed our money. I still remember being in fourth grade and my teacher playing a clip of a speech Bill Cosby did at Temple about Black youth, um, not sagging, not cursing, how all of our problems were because we were basically
Not respectable.
behaving in unrespectable ways. And I feel like for a very long time we have been socialized to believe that that's a one-way conversation, that is not a conversation that happens both ways, where you offer
Child.
your critique about what my problem is sitting from your ivory tower at NBC, where you executive producer credits and getting residuals for life, telling me that my life will materially change if I pull my pants up over my ass crack when I'm walking to the same house and the same trash schools and the same minimum wage job, whether my pants is at my butt crack or my waistline. Okay. Um, but I think we've just all been led to believe that those are one-way conversations, that they have insight to offer us, but we have no insight to offer them back. And so when we do, it's automatically put in the category of that's haterade. That's an attack. That's somebody trying to take down a Black man. And so I think we have to think about why we as a community have decided that the value of your voice is tied to the amount of power and the amount of prestige and the amount of money you have, as opposed to just the sageness of your insight.
Yes, and for me, so to your point of material conditions, I think that that's why I take it so seriously, because I'm not talking about, again, somebody whose harm is not changing the material conditions that Black people live in. Tyler Perry literally has the influence in some cases to change the material conditions that Black people live in, to change the ecology of a neighborhood such that people who might have been living there for generations can no longer afford to be able to live there, right? Beyonce has the power to be able to say, I imagine she has the power. This I don't know for sure, but I assume that she has the power to be able to say, hey, I'm not going to let my movie air in a place that is having active genocide on another place. Like, I'm just not going to let that happen on my watch. And I can change that. I can change the narrative of what people are saying about the genocide that is happening in real time that we're all watching. And so in her case, I think silence is violence.
Yes.
And in his case, I think his active maneuvering in his community is violence leveled against them. And so I can't just be like, it's not that serious, because it really is just that serious, Amber.
And also, I so it's interesting because you talked about the two forms, the active choices, the silence. And I think the other form of violence we often get from our wealthy Black elites is the gaslight, right? And so I think about our Queen Mother Oprah, and I
Uh-oh.
think about, you know, her active discourse in the weight loss space over the last 20-ish years, starting, you know,
20
from the
years?
well, when was the sugar? Was that the 2000s? I feel like sugar, the sugar
Oh,
wagon, that was like the early 2000s,
when she
right?
brought the fat out in the wagon?
Yes,
That
and
had to be in the 90s. That had to be
was
in the
it in
90s
the
when
90s?
yes.
Okay, it maybe even so even longer than 20 years when she came out with the wagon after she lost weight, and proudly dragged it out, and I feel like there's a way oftentimes that wealthy elite people gaslight us, right? Because Oprah talks to us about hiking, and she
Yes.
talks to us about how, she has decided to eat well and eat from the land. And then in these same videos, she brings her chef to demonstrate the recipes. And then she shows how the food comes literally from the farm, from her farm, her farm to
That she
her
stole from the
table.
native people in Hawaii?
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
allegedly.
and even like we can even talk about the place in Santa Barbara, but it's this idea that these are things that are very easy to accomplish, right? If you just make a few changes, like you can do it too. And it's like, well, yes,
Yeah.
girl, I could eat a lot less Chick-fil-A in my minivan if I had a chef. And if I had time to hire people or resources to hire people to grow a garden in my backyard, or if I had hundreds of acres of extra land where I could do that, and if I had time to hike because I had a staff of people that were working around the clock to increase my material wealth so that I'm literally making money when I hike and when I sleep and when I recreate. Like, there is a way sometimes that those among us who have reached the highest levels act like if we just make a few changes, we can do the same things they're doing. That's one of the reasons why I cannot stand Steve Harvey,
Uh-oh.
because you look at Black people and be like, how you sleeping and you only making $10 an hour?
Yes.
You
Steve
won't
told
have
y'all
to
we got the same 24
you won't
hours.
have to sacrifice some sleep. And it's like, but medically, that's just not true. Like, you have to go to bed and get sleep to stay alive, whether you make $10 an hour or $10,000 an hour or 10 million hours, $10 million an hour. Your body requires sleep. It literally does. Like, there's not enough money you can make where your body won't require no sleep. It just, and
But you're right, Amber, and that's the thing that drives me crazy is because they hold themselves up as an example of we just need to follow whatever the roadmap is that they gave us and we can be just like them. When we know that capitalism allows exceptions, right? That's part of the way that the system can recreate itself. It has to
propagandize us.
allow
Mm-hmm.
it
Yes.
has to allow people to be able to escape, to make it big, to become billionaires, to do all the things so that then we have these aspirations. We can believe that it's true. And that to me is one of the reasons why representation and the whole representation matters. The whole thing. I'm like, my question to you, does representation really matter?
Yes, representation matters if representation is contextualized in the right way. So
Is it ever?
representation, very rarely, but the idea of representation as a framework of a highway to what is possible if you replicate the steps of the person who is represented is a lie. But representation as a tool to expand imagination, I think that is very powerful. Just people's conception about what is possible, not necessarily so you can be what you see, but so that you can know that where you are right now is not where you have to stay. And I don't mean that in a material wealth building kind of way. I mean that in a my voice matters. Like, so I can speak truth to power, right? Because that to me, like, that's how I wanted to become a lawyer. I got a book about Oprah in the third grade, and I saw a big fat Black woman talking, and people were listening to her. And that was the first time I had a thought in my head that I could talk and people would listen to what I have to say. Like, what? Like, I just never, it just never clicked with me before, other than being a teacher, that as a Black girl with a certain body, that I could talk and people would care what I had to say. And so seeing what she did expanded my imagination. But my aspiration is not to be a billionaire with a talk show. What that reminded me is that now I know that even if I never reach millions, there is a way that I have been able to get a lot of education and learn a lot. And my voice matters. And I can use that voice to tell other people what I know so that they can be empowered to advocate for themselves and advocate for a system that is equitable and fair for all of us. You know what I'm saying? So, yes, in that way, I do think representation matters.
Okay. And I think in terms of an imagination, I will agree with you that that's good for people to be able to broaden their imaginations and their thoughts about what possibilities for them, possibilities outside of wealth, possibilities for their humanity, their spirituality, those sorts of things. Yes. But I think what we get fed is we get fed a political system that says, here's Kamala Harris. Y'all said y'all wanted a Black woman VP, and here she is. And here's Ketanji Brown. Y'all said y'all wanted a Black woman on the Supreme Court, and here she is. And you get these Black people who, just in my opinion, are never going to change these systems. Ketanji Brown ain't finna change the Supreme Court. We seen Kamala Harris ain't finna change the United States. Like, at the end of the day, does it matter that the Secretary of Defense is a Black man? I think that's awful, personally. But a lot of people are like, yeah, Secretary Austin, really? I'm like, that's what y'all want? I find it so, as somebody who has seen the inside of corporations and what it can look like to be on the inside of corporations and to be one of a few, those situations, those circumstances can be very harmful to you, to your spirit, to your humanity. And for us to want to put Black people in what I think are harmful circumstances and positions, I don't know why we want that for each other. Honestly, like, I don't know why we would want a Black person to have to live under the stress of what it means to be the president in this country. Why for? To know that they're not going to do nothing that a white president wouldn't do.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with that. But I think some of that, again, is just the ways that we've been propagandized. Because if you aspire to be a part of the system, you can't aspire to deconstruct the system at the same time. And so, yes, creating the myth of exceptional Black people who get to spaces and occupy positions of powers as an aspiration in and of itself is, again, just the way that the system props itself up. But what I do think is interesting and what I do think is necessary is for us to have conversations about what we can do to leverage those examples as proof of what can happen if we take that power and direct it elsewhere, right? So it's like, okay, clearly there's some Black people out here who are capable, right? Who have the actual competence to work in the highest echelons of government, who have the competence legally to take a seat at the Supreme Court. So it's like the question becomes, instead of tapping those people to go work inside the system that's playing us, like, we need to be taking that power and doing something else with it. And I think that's the distraction of racism, like Toni Morrison told us. Like, it is a distraction that keeps you from doing your work. Because what if people who had as much access to power as Kamala Harris or as other people, who work in government and your Ketanji Brown Jacksons or whatever, like, what if they were directing that power towards active liberation, right? Towards an active deconstructing of the system?
I think they can't, because a lot of them are traitors. But I don't know if I'm supposed to say that out loud. So I don't think people want to deconstruct a system that they are very keen on staying in place.
Well, yes. And I mean, that's a whole other conversation because here's the thing that we don't talk about a lot amongst Black people, even in conversations about liberation and conversations about community, in the same way that poverty is pornographic in a white capitalist construct, is pornographic for Black people who sit in that same construct. I mean,
You're not
it
talking about the Jack and Jill Blacks, are you, Amber?
wow, girl,
I'm just
I almost called you out your African American name.
I'm
But
just
yes,
asking. I don't know.
yes,
I don't know.
yes.
Okay.
It feel part of the privilege of wealth is knowing that everybody doesn't have it. Part of why going to a fancy restaurant is special is because everybody can't get the reservation. Everybody can't afford to eat there. There is something pornographic about knowing you can live somewhere, you can travel somewhere, you can possess something that everybody else cannot possess. And so it's not even that they're traders, they're just capitalists. They're
And
just,
to me, that make you a traitor.
I mean, but girl, we capitalists too. I mean, so I'm not about to say everybody who's a
Again,
capitalist is
you're not finna put me up there with Mother Oprah. Mother Oprah, who in Hawaii has thousands of acres of land. We know that, right? Mother
yes,
Mother Oprah, who after the devastation in Hawaii had the nerve to get together with The Rock and
and
use the
try to
mouth that
raise
God
money.
gave her to say, "We would like y'all to contribute to a fund we have set up. Give us money." Billionaire. Like,
Yeah, no, I'm with you, but
if that
yes,
ain't traitorous, I don't know what is. And me and her ain't on the same level.
no,
We
we
not.
ain't on the same level. I'm just saying being a capitalist and being a trader is not synonymous to me. They ain't synonyms. But I think there is a way that all of us, to some degree, take pleasure in having and being able to access things that other people cannot access. And until we dig that root out and do that work, um, the aspiration is always going to be, I want to be where you are within this construct, as opposed to look at what my capacity is and look at what my capability is to ascend in this construct. I want to take that outside of it and do something to tear it down. And the only way you're ever going to be invested in tearing it down is if you're willing to openly embrace the idea that everything you have and everything you experience should be experienced by everybody else. And I just think that's the place where we ain't there yet.
And Amber, to the questions that you posed before, I don't know what the framework looks like for accountability. I don't know how we do it and people feel like we're not just haters. I don't know how to do it in community with people who don't have any desire to burn the shit down. I don't know how to do any of those things. The only thing I do know how to do is to tell you when what you're doing ain't what you ought to be doing. That's the only thing I know how to do. And so I don't have no other tools. I don't know. I don't know. Y'all got to show me what to do. I don't know.
Yeah. And the only thing we can do is be open to receiving it. My grandmother used to always say, it ain't nothing wrong with taking the fish and throwing out the bones. And so being able and being willing to listen to somebody offer you a meaningful critique, even if the whole entire critique is not something that you find useful or something you find beneficial or agreeable, we have to commit to making a space to hearing each other out without easily dismissing people. And we have to reprogram our mind to know that it is not just a one-way street where we're going to pay all this money to let Tyler and Oprah and Beyonce and all these people tell us how to get our life and how to free ourselves. We have to be willing to talk back to them too. And we have to be willing to hold them accountable too, because nobody is exempt from being harmful. And all of us have the capacity to be rogue and hurtful and destructive to our community framework if somebody isn't willing to pull us to the side and be like, sis, don't do that. Or don't do that like that. Don't do that.
And I appreciate the group chat for being that place. You know, shout out to group chats all over the world. I think
Amen.
I think the group chats are working hard out here, keeping people out of trouble. Get you in the right one because sometimes they will put you in trouble. But I this is like I don't this is the end of this season for us. Um and brokerage, so we won't be back until the spring, because Amber has a full schedule, so we have to wait for her calendar to open back up to be able to work with the people again. But I guess we just kind of leave it on a question, Amber. It's
So much
like,
for community. You see this, damn, damn.
it's me too. I want a break. Let me not lie. It's not just Amber. I also too would like a break, right?
Okay.
Like,
Going
it's
to the
real.
beach next week.
Leave me out of this, Amber. Leave me out of this. But you're right. So I too would like a break. So we are gonna, like we always do at the end of a season, we're gonna take a couple few months off to get our break. So I do feel like we're ending on a question, and this is the kind of stuff that while I'm on the beach, I'll be thinking about, like, how what is the model? How do we do it in a way that is helpful, that's generative, that is not based on anything other than love of the community, right? Because at the end of the day, for me, that's what it's about. These people individually, I don't know them. I don't know enough about them to care in that, like, broader than them being Black people. But I do care for the masses of Black people. And I'm just like, what do we do? I don't know.
And it's interesting because I think that question has been sort of the thread of connectivity through all of our episodes this season. Really asking questions that have hard answers, that do not have a period at the end, because I think in the beginning of our identity as a brokish podcast, it was a lot of uncovering and a lot of exposing and a lot of showing people where these insidious elements lie. And I think we've sort of moved to the next phase of that work, that it's like, now that we know where it is, what do we do about it? And grappling with the fact that a lot of these questions do not have easy answers that come with a period at the end of the sentence, like a recipe card. A lot of it is just holding the tension that it is not a clear path, but we cannot stop because it ain't. We got to keep going anyway.
Because that's what we going to do. That's what our ancestors did. That's what we've been doing. That's what we training for. That's what we training our children to do. So, like, can't stop, won't stop. That's just what it is.
Amen. Amen.
So this is the last episode of the season, Amber. So do you really have homework today?
You know what? It's actually good homework because this came out of the group chat. So I'm going to give y'all something to take back to your group chat. So there's an article that we're going to post in the receipts that I want to encourage you all to read and take to your group chat to talk about. And it's actually a 2016 article by Dr. Yaba Blay, who is one of the thought leaders and professors that we were talking about in our group chat. An article she wrote in 2016 about Beyonce's formation video, and it's called On Jackson 5 Nostrils, Creole versus Negro, and Beefing Over Beyonce's Formation. And Dr. Yaba Blay is the New Orleans native. And so she was just writing about how some of the things in the video she found problematic. Beyonce replicating Hurricane Katrina, referencing sort of Creole and glorifying it in a way that overlooks its dirty colorist history, right? Just that term in general, and just some of the elements in the video, but also sitting in the tension of, I like the song, I like Beyonce. How do we jam to a song and, call our good sis out while knowing that, she is a talented Black woman and it's okay to like her and celebrate her. And so I feel like it's a really good example of how we can do this work well. And I feel like it's a good example of the conversations we need to be having with ourselves about a lot of our faves who do things that are problematic. So read the article, it'll only take you about 5 or 6 minutes, and then take it to your group chat and have the conversation.
Well, thank you, Amber, for the homework over the break. We appreciate you for that. And Amber, I always appreciate you. You are forever the diplomat. You are forever the peacemaker in the group chat. As I wish to light my matches, you are like, well, Erika, let's look at another side. And so I just want to thank you for that because, I need the balance. That's great. But y'all, we got a lot to celebrate as a community. We have a lot of people doing amazing things. We have a lot of art and history and just everything to admire. But at the same time, we also have to keep in mind that when there is harm, we have to be able to call it out. We can't be like how for some people it used to be and how some people it still is, where we hide and stuff that we know is going on. We have to shed lights, but we have to figure out how do we do that in love and in a community-minded way. So we're going to keep asking the question and keep trying to figure it out because clearly we don't know the answers. So thanks for tuning in. We look forward to catching up with you on the next episode of Brokish.
All right, good people. Thanks for listening to Brokish. For more episodes, visit us at brokish.com or subscribe, and Brokish will get direct deposited into your favorite podcast app on the 1st and 15th. Share Brokish with your friends and join the conversation on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Music for Brokish is Come Get Some by Blank and Kit. Until next time, goodbye and good luck.
They say when you wear Black Power Media gear, you can accomplish anything. You can play any and every position. Coaching, to kicking, to receiving, to running and juking. And oh my goodness, I see that again in slow motion. Get off me. And you're going to have a lot of haters coming at you, but what you got to do is you got to shake them off and get to your goal and accomplish it. And when that's done, it's a beautiful thing. I'm talking about going hard, extra, for that extra point. And when it's done beautifully, you talking about touchdown. Oh, and the crowd goes wild and they're celebrating with you and everything. Man, let's see that again. Nice.
Black Power Media, baby. That's how we do it.
Now go to blackpowermedia.org and get you some of that gear. Empower yourself today.